Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Scholastic Sitdown. It's week 7 in the SHL, but I believe this is episode 6 because we didn't have an episode last week due to the SHL kickoff show, which was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, me and Luke both could not be there for two different reasons, but I watched the show. Max, Jimmy, and Wes did a great job, great guests. And so that was your podcast last week. And now we're back on the Scholastic Sit Down. I'm Dylan Ward. That's Luke Jorden. Luke, how have you been over these last 2 weeks?
Well, I've been doing good. I'm a little bit pissed off I couldn't make the kickoff show because you had a legitimate reason. I did not. He got under the weather. That was because you started to get sick right then, right?
Yeah, I started to get sick that day, and then it just got so bad I had to stay home.
And for me, my phone screen shattered, so I had no device to get down to Chicago. And as much as I love Chicago, I don't know it like the back of my mind. My car has a ridiculously outdated GPS. It's a 2011. I was just like, I'm not going to roll the dice with anything. And I'm still 19, so even my parents were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "All right, all right." So,
You gotta just stop at the gas station, get yourself a map. I know if any,
yeah,
parents
that's the
podcast,
Max
they know what
Anderson
that's
days,
all.
right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. All right, so we've got a pretty standard episode for you today. We've got the recap of last week. We will have a conversation with head coach of the St. Viator Lions, Tim Benz. We'll, of course, have our Outside the SHL segment as well, preview of next week. And then we've got our question of the week as well as trivia. So let's get right into it, Luke, and review last week. And there were a lot of games last week, a lot of fun ones. And the last one of the week was the first SHL Game of the Week broadcast, which I know you were part of. I was there at the rink, but just watching as a spectator. But we'll get there. Let's start at the very beginning of the week. First game was on Wednesday, October 23rd. It was Glenbrook North at home against the Carmel Catholic Corsairs. GBN wins that one 3-2 in overtime. Thomas Henriksen with the game winner. But GBN had a 2-0 lead in this game, and then Carmel came back to tie, including Aiden Gamble with 31 seconds left to make it 2-2. So Carmel does get the OTL point out of that game, but GBN with the victory there.
Yeah, I mean, you say it best. It's huge for Carmel to just get a point out of a team like Glenbrook North. That's primarily in part of Thomas Steiner, who stopped 30 out of 33 against an aggressive Spartans offense. So, as much as you lose, you can't hang your head too low. If you're a Corsair, grab a point, move on to the next one for sure.
Yeah, especially because Raderman was in net, and he's not a tough goalie to beat. But they did get two pucks past him. Up next, the next night, Thursday, October 24th, it was New Trier at home against the Lake Forest Scouts, one of those good old-fashioned 9:10 p.m. starts at North Shore.
My
This
favorite.
game was all New Trier. 6-1 was your final score. They had a 6-0 lead after two periods. And then John Milliman for the Scouts does get the lone goal in the third period. So Scouts won the third period, but this game was all New Trier. There's no secrets there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the true secret is you got to try to win all three, really. But, you know, New Trier, 6 goals on 24 shots. I do give Lake Forest credit though. They were able to put 20 on you. A lot of these blowouts that New Trier is on the winning side of, typically the shots are very lopsided as well, but the Scouts held their own when it comes to shots on goal, just unfortunately could not put more past the Trevians. But New Trier just still showing their dominance for sure.
All right, and then we look ahead to Friday night. That was October 25th. The York Dukes at home, of course, Friday night in Addison. This was a goaltending duel between Jack Brown of the York Dukes and then actually Adam Silver played the first period and Michael Raderman played the second and third period. This game went all the way to overtime 0-0 and a shootout, still 0-0. And then four shots into the shootout, finally, the first puck to the back of the net by either team. Thomas Henriksen, the same man that won it in overtime a couple nights prior, gets the shootout winner. Spartan shot first, so the Dukes had a chance of rebuttal, and Raderman made the save. So an impressive defensive performance by both teams, but Here in the SHL, there are no ties, and one team always comes away with the win. That was GBN.
Yeah, what a bizarre game that was. I was looking at the score sheet. I was like, did Raderman's like lace break or something? It was very, you don't see too much of that only first period
Right.
substitution. But Adam Silver able to hold his own, stopping 9 out of 9, and then Raderman 16 out of 16. And then Raderman's a stonewall in the shootout. Bad day to be a puck trying to pass a goalie, as it only happened once all game.
Yeah, that's incredible. Moving on, we've got now. I've got a question for you, by the way. Do both goalies get a shutout in that situation? Because I never really understood that.
You know what? That's a great question. You know who would be a great ask for that?
Sam Schwartz.
Previous guest Sam Schwartz.
Yeah, because the thing is, right? Let's say you win 1-0 in the shootout, but within the shootout you allowed a goal, but still came away with the win. Then I don't know, whatever.
If
That's
you
a whole
allow the
different game.
goal, oh, that's mind-boggling. Because I was about to tell you, if you take the loss and you still stopped like Brown did 24 out of 24, I'm assuming you'd still or you wouldn't get the shutout. But now when you say it like that, maybe well, they either both I think they either both do or they both don't. But yeah, great
Yeah,
question. We got to figure that out.
that is interesting. All right, up next we have Saturday, October 26th, first day of the week that we had multiple games. There were two, both Glenbrooks at home, just down the street from each other. Let's start with Glenbrook South versus Lake Forest. Titans come away with the 5-3 victory in this one. Lake Forest scored a minute in, then the Titans with five unanswered goals before Lake Forest got two more to make it a little bit closer. But at the end of the day, this was a victory for the Glenbrook South Titans, and this was at the time their third straight victory as well. They're heating up.
Yeah, absolutely great stuff from the Titans. And Dylan, you were there, so I mean, just from your vantage point, what did you see that stuck out for the Titans?
I thought that they were passing really well. The power play looked really nice. It seemed like they were just always in the right position to get a good scoring opportunity. And we're going to hear a little bit about that when we talk to Tim Benz, but just a good look all around. Eight skaters for GBS registered at least a point. Blake Hoffer with two goals, and the Titans, after losing two of their first three games of the season, have sort of caught fire here. At least uh, you know from the perspective of Saturday. We'll get to Sunday, but the other game on Saturday night, Glenbrook North at home against Loyola. And how about the Spartans going to overtime for the third straight game here in the SHL, tied up 1-1. Julian Gabal and Damian Jerzik get the two goals in regulation. They both came in the first period, less than a minute apart from each other, by the way. So another long stretch of play without any goals, sort of that 0-0 vibe that they had on Friday night. All the way to the shootout it went, and this was another four-round shootout. But the Glenbrook North Spartans come away with the victory once again. Josh Raub scores the goal in the fourth round, and Michael Raderman makes a save, and the Spartans now, after losing that first game, 1-0 to St. Ignatius way back when in the season, they have put together five straight victories in the SHL.
Yeah, no, they're arguably the hottest team in the S, especially after, of course, they go to overtime or shootout 3 times in a row. But you're talking about a game where you went to shootout against York in a Friday night in Addison the night prior, and they somehow pull it out against Loyola Gold coming off of a back-to-back. If that doesn't tell you about how threatening the Spartans can be, I don't know what will, Dylan.
Yeah, so Loyola put up a good fight again. They are still undefeated in
In
regulation with a
regulation
record of
reminds me of the
6-0-3.
2013 Hawks when they won like
Yes.
it was like 23 games until they had a regulation loss, something crazy like that. It's giving
Yeah.
me those vibes.
Yeah, it's the last time the Trophy winning team also won the Stanley Cup that
That's
season as
true.
well. Good memories from that. And then we go to Sunday, and for the first time all season, we're early season, we had four games on one day. It was absolute madness, and it finished off with the SHL game of the week. So we will get to that in a moment, but let's start with Loyola Gold hosting the York Dukes at their classic Sunday 4:10 p.m. ice slot. Loyola comes away with the 4-2 victory. They score in every period. Noah Moreno, Christopher Gall, Cooper Nelson, and Nicholas Thomas with the four for the Ramblers in this one.
Yeah, and two of those coming from the power play. This is a power play unit that's really starting to get their stuff together. Two big ones on the man advantage versus the Dukes, and they were 2 for 4 on the day, 50%.
So York, I want to talk about York because now their record falls to 2-7-2, and we look at all these games on a weekly basis when we review the previous week. Of course, I have no choice but to look at every final score in the SHL because I have to go make the final score Instagram post. York, it feels like their record should not be 2 wins out of 11 games. It feels like they're in every game. You look at this game, 4-2 is a close game, especially against a powerhouse like Loyola with that record we were talking about. Um, they also played Loyola earlier in the season where the Ramblers won 1-0. They played against GBS earlier in the season where they lost 3-1 with an empty netter. So really another one goal type of game. It's just I don't know what they need to do to get it to click over there for York, but we will see how the season goes along. I mean, you look at 11 games played, you're talking about over a third of the season already done.
Yeah, and you know what? It just goes to show how much parity, as I mentioned episodes prior, there is in the SHL. Because you look at some of the losing teams, you look at York, you look at Carmel, another great example, who had two very close games, once again taking GBN to overtime this week, but they're still at the bottom of the barrels. And in every league, there has to be a team with good winning records and good losing record, or sorry, bad losing records. You never want to have a good losing record, but it just goes to show you that the teams that are losing aren't bad. They're just coming up short every single time by a hair, and we've seen that from especially the Corsairs and Dukes.
Kind of reminds me of the start to the season the Chicago Blackhawks have had.
Oh, I thought you were about to say the Chicago Bears,
Oh
because like
yeah, them
they're
too.
bottom of the NFC North,
Yeah.
and they're like 5-3 now. I don't want no four
Go
and three.
figure that the one year we're actually promising our whole division is too, but that's a whole nother topic that we can talk
Excellent.
about some other time. Up next on Sunday, the second of four games, it was St. Viator with their first road game of the season. After starting with five straight at Mount Prospect Ice Arena, they traveled to the Edge to take on the Fenwick Friars. The Friars did outshoot the Lions in this one, 28-22, but St. Viator after a 0-0 first period, turned on the Jets, win this one 5-0. Brock Harrer gets the 28 save shutout. And St. Viator now a sneaky 4-1-1 here in SHL play. So they're kind of among those teams that have significantly fewer games played than the average, but pretty good points percentage there.
Yeah, no, stole the words out of my mouth, Dylan. Kind of just like how the Spartans, Titans, and other company have been. When you look at the SHL standings right now, they might be kind of in the middle, but realistically, points percentage, they're up near the top. It's just because we're still at that imbalance of games in this season. And for Viator, first game on the road, but all their home games prior, just want to shout out their PA music guy, Dom, who I was able to talk to before the Titans Lions game that I did, and he was just really appreciating the podcast. But we got to appreciate him because their music, their presentation, walking out or sorry, skating out with the lights going on, the like disco lights and everything, the actual lights off. It's a really cool atmosphere at St. Viator. And apparently they can still bring that same intensity that they do at home on the road with a 5-0 win.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Luke. It's high school hockey. It doesn't need to have that production value, but the fact that St. Viator goes above and beyond, and what you talked about, how they skate onto the ice with the dimmed lights. It's if you have not been to a St. Viator game, St. Viator home game this season, you should definitely try to make it out just so you can see the in-game presentation that they have going on. It feels very professional, and it's something that's really fun to see.
Yeah, it's free too. Get them before they start charging you.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. High school hockey, it's free. People don't realize that. Basketball, football, you have to pay to get in. No, just walk into the rink. It's a public rink. You watch the game for free. All right, next up, we have the Lake Forest Scouts against the Carmel Catholic Corsairs. Lake Forest at home. This has grown into a pretty significant rivalry in the SHL, you could say. Both of these northern schools, and Lake Forest wins this one 3-2. They had a 3-0 lead after 2 periods with 2 power play goals, and then in the third period, Deacon Rose scores twice to get the Carmel Corsairs back within one, but it was not enough. Almost as even of a game as you can get. 2 power play goals on each side, a 1 goal finish. Shots on goal on this one, Carmel led 23-22, but Lake Forest really feels like they've been hanging out right around that 500 points percentage all season long. And they dipped 2 games below 500 points percentage wise, and now they are 5-6-1 after this victory. So Lake Forest, one of those teams that missed the playoffs 2 years ago in their first year in the SHL. Last year snuck in as the 7th seed, so they actually finished with a better record than York did, which is funny to think that York went to the United Center. But Lake Forest, I still don't really know what I'm expecting here in terms of the season's end from the scouts this time around.
Yeah, I mean, really hard to identify them. They have played some incredible games, and they played some games that they probably wish they got back. And just kind of like how last year with the SHL playoffs, it's just about finding that consistency at the right time. And right now, they're still building it up, but you're just hoping that you can just keep battling, get a playoff spot, and then once the SHL playoffs, state playoffs come around, you can find that consistency you've been looking for. And by the way, bad day to be a penalty kill unit. As you mentioned, 4 total power play goals. I would have loved to see that in person. I love a good power play.
All right, and last but not least, Luke, it was the Glenbrook South Titans and St. Ignatius Wolfpack at Fifth Third Arena. The first SHL game of the week of this season sees these two teams rematch from not only earlier this season, but last year in both the SHL and the state playoffs. In both of those, the Titans were the 3 seed, the Wolfpack were the 6 seed, and in both instances, the Wolfpack get the seeded upset over the Titans. And now, with a 4-1 win, the Wolfpack have secured themselves the season series over GBS, having already beat them 3-2 in overtime earlier on in the season at Glenview Ice Center. And boy, it seems like over the last few years, St. Ignatius just has Glenbrook South's number.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you're looking at the state bracket come February, I mean, Glenbrook South probably just hoping that St. Ignatius is not only on the other side of the bracket, but they get knocked out because,
Hmm.
I mean, it's really been the one true consistent kryptonite. In the last couple of years, they've beaten number one New Trier more than they have beaten St. Ignatius. So it's just something about how Spencer Montgomery's team plays the Titans has been incredible. And just from being there on the broadcast last night with Max Anderson, Wes Anderson, it just, Glenbrook South just looked a little bit slow. And I think that's just part of the back to back. As we talked about, they hosted Lake Forest the night prior, and back to backs aren't easy, especially when you're down a defenseman in Asher Vanderplug and they're rotating 5D. St. Ignatius, though, just really finding the holes in Thomas Preston. I mean, they're probably the first team this season to make Thomas Preston look like fairly human. So credits to the Wolfpack offense. They really cooked it up in this one.
Yeah, 1-1 after the first in that one. Then St. Ignatius with a goal in the second period. Brady Vasic ended up being the game winner. Sam Reef and Austin Haynes as well. So St. Ignatius gets back above that 500 winning percentage with 6-3-2 record. And
And
the
one
Titans
other one
fall.
other thing I want to
Yeah.
note is that if you guys have not watched St. Ignatius play, you guys have to watch them play. I mean, getting to see them in person for the first time this season, they have so many sneaky fast guys. They love to beat defenders with speed. They are a fun offense to watch.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning of the season, Luke, that they were my state championship prediction. And really I was just, trying to figure out who to say besides New Trier so I wouldn't be boring. But now, I mean, I was at that game last night. I've seen them a couple times. They look really, really good. They could absolutely be the team to beat come March. All right, so that was the recap of last week. Lots of games. We got another busy week coming up in the SHL, but we'll get to that as this podcast episode rolls along. Now I'm going to turn it over to my partner here, Luke Jorden, as per usual, as he fills us in with what's going on here in Illinois high school hockey outside the SHL. So, Luke, take it away.
Thank you, Dylan. Well, starting with the IHSHL North Central, Deerfield and BGHW are tied for the top of the pack. Pardon that. Actually, Deerfield has a tie on them that I did not see, so great start. But the Warriors are on top of this North Central division by 1 point over BGHW. New Trier Blue 6-1, Prep 6-3. A lot of parity. 6 6-win teams. All those teams playing 10 games or less.
Wow.
And Chicago North is also creeping up as well with a 5-0-1 record. They have not been beaten so far this season. So it is going to be a fun North Central division that flows out throughout the rest of the year. And now the CCHL picking up a lot of games these last 2 weeks. And how about the Bennett Red Wings? Technically, right now at the top of the CCHL. Of course, they played more games than SHL teams, St. Ignatius, Fenwick, other company like Brother Rice, all four of those teams undefeated, but Bennett on top of the division with a 5-0 record. Wolfpack are 3-0, the Friars 3-0, Brother Rice 2-0, Providence Catholic 2-3, and then a couple of struggling teams at the bottom. Then we go to the largest division that I cover, and that is the IHSHL West, where, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, it's still Plainfield and Glenbard at the top of the pack, except the Predators have a 3 point edge as they are 9-1, and it's 3 points for a win in the IHSHL West. Kind of a little bit of a different rule spectrum compared to other divisions, but the Predators have 27 points with a 9-1 record, and Glenbard is 8-2, but that includes an overtime loss. And they have 24 points. So I guess they don't get points out for overtime losses as well. Other teams, Maine 7-3, Naperville 7-5, Neuqua Valley 7-5. Once again, it's parity all over the state of Illinois as it is every year. And those are the three leagues that we cover outside of this one. So let's put the spotlight back on the SHL.
Yeah, parity all over the state of Illinois, and we've been talking about it as this podcast has grown along. Lots of parity in the SHL too. So I think I'm really interested to see some of these results come state playoff time, but got a long way to go until then. So now we're gonna turn it over to our guest this week, which is head coach of the St. Viator Lions, Tim Benz. So we've got a nice conversation with him for you, and we will cut to that right now. All right, we are welcoming to the podcast this week's guest, head coach of the St. Viator Lions, Tim Benz. Tim, glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So we have a couple questions for you, but the first thing that I wanted to say is, normally we wait until the trivia question to reveal the winner of last week's trivia, but we're just going to do that now because you were actually the winner. The question was, who won the state championship in 2003? And you got it. Fenwick beat Loyola Gold. You also added that those two were in the championship as well in 2004. And the reason that you know is because Loyola beat Glenbrook South, which, of course, back in 2003, you were a player on. So uh, congratulations for getting that right.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a throwback to the past. Those were the days playing against Coach Fabrini over at Fenwick. He was a heck of a player.
Yeah. So leading into that, just want to start by asking the entire high school hockey landscape, not just the leagues and the SHL, but really the state, having played in the early 2000s and now coaching in today, what are some of the biggest differences or maybe some things that have stayed the same in high school hockey?
Well, first and foremost, the high school hockey, I guess, landscape, as you put it, it has grown as a whole. Back in my playing days, there was never this amount of high school players. Obviously, the sport has grown too, so we have more hockey players in general. But along with the popularity that high school hockey is gaining at the quote unquote midget level of play in the state, we're seeing lots of clubs now with more than two teams, varsity ones, varsity twos, two JVs, three JVs. I mean, it's growing, which is great to see. And also, with that comes advancements with the skill sets too. So in comparison to back when I think I was playing in the early 2000s, I think speed and physicality are probably about comparable, but the skill sets these kids have nowadays it doesn't even compare to what it was then.
With a lot of these recent St. Viator teams, You guys like to pull a lot of players from the Chargers Hockey Club, which you are also the director of. How much of an advantage does it give you to not only be the hockey director of the Northwest Chargers, but the St. Viator Lions as well?
Um, I think being a youth hockey director in general, not necessarily just the Chargers, has its advantages, especially being associated with a club being St. Viator, where we are allowed to pull kids from outside our quote unquote geographic range. If we were a public school, you got your town or your district, wherever you're at. But here we can get kids from all over the place. So being familiar with the youth landscape definitely helps. So I know what's going on at the Bantam levels across all the Central States and Nihil teams. So we're well aware of who goes to potential feeder schools of Viator, mainly, Catholic youth schools. So we dip into those, whether they skate at the Chargers or the Leafs or the Blues or the Express. We're able to find these guys just from having familiarity across the youth landscape.
Well, looking at this season's St. Viator team, not bad of a start at all. 4-1-1 is your record at the moment at time of recording this. You've won 3 of your last 4, including last night, the 5-0 win over the Fenwick Friars. Harrer with the 28 save shutout. I mean, I know it's early and not a lot of games played, and we're only in October, obviously. But what have you
Mhm.
seen from your team in this nice start you've put together in the SHL?
Well, what I like is we got a lot of different guys chipping in. We were still fairly young. We only have 4 senior skaters on our team, and 2 of our goalies are senior goalies. So, being as young as we are, it's good to get a hot start and get confidence. One of our strengths is our back end and Brock Hare. It's no secret. He's as good or is potentially one of the best in the state, no doubt. So having him as a backstop gives not only our defensemen but our forwards a ton of confidence coming into games, knowing that hey, if we do make a mistake in the neutral zone, Brock's back there. He's going to keep us out of trouble 9 times out of 10. We're not as big and physical as we've been in the past, but we do have a ton of skill and a ton of speed. So we're trying to play to those strengths throughout the year and hopefully capitalize on opportunities. You mentioned last night against Fenwick, we were fortunate to come out on the winning end, but we did get outshot, and we just had the fortunate bounces come our way and capitalize on our chances. Whereas I think Fenwick did not last night, and we talk about it, and I mean we, meaning all the SHL coaches, you guys, everybody. That if you get one bounce here or one bounce there, anybody can beat anybody. And last night we were just fortunate to come out on top.
Speaking of Brock Hare, he is a goalie with an A on his chest. What qualities have driven him to get that captainship?
So first and foremost, Brock's a 3-year varsity player. He was on the team as a sophomore. Pretty much took over the net last year. We had another guy named Pat O'Gara who played a lot. It was his senior year, and the two pretty much split duties until Brock kind of took over the reins there. And it's no secret this is Brock's net this year. We do have obviously 2 very capable guys in John Mayer and Calder Turpin who can jump in the net if needed. But again, being a 3-year guy, as skilled as he is, he leads by example. He's not the most vocal guy in the locker room or on the bench or on the ice, but again, just I mean, you guys watch him play. He stands on his head. He makes very athletic saves. He's in position to make those saves. And again, everybody feeds off of him.
Talk about in that last game last night being outshot. You've got 3 games in 6 days coming up against some tough opponents. You play Glenbrook North twice and New Trier right in the middle of that. According to the SHL stats, you guys have a 13.1% shooting percentage, which is second best in the SHL. So, do you, again, it's not a lot of games played, but do you find that your team is good at finding those good opportunities? Because, you look at the shots on goal from all the way from the SHL to the NHL, you see teams with not a lot of shots win a lot. So do you think that stat in particular is a reflection of, you guys finding the right opportunities when they come?
Definitely. I think in more advanced stats, you're talking about NHL and stuff. There's more. How do I say that? Shots on goal aren't as important as they used to be. It's more about capitalizing on opportunity and turnovers. So if we're able to do that, win the neutral zone, win our blue lines, and play the odds, if you will, meaning getting pucks deep, keeping them on the right side of the red line, and then capitalizing within puck possession and pulling defenders out of position, it's going to generate less shots on net, but hopefully more quality. And then, of course, obviously capitalizing on the power play is important too when you get those chances.
last question on my behalf. Dylan can ask however many he'd still like to. But while you played high school hockey, do you have a favorite memory intact in your brain?
From playing days, coaching days, what do
Playing
you?
days, playing days.
Oh, sure. I mean, and again, this is probably beating a dead horse because tons of guys talk about it. But playing in the GBS GBN Thanksgiving game was always extremely memorable. I mean, back then it was still at the Glenview Ice Rink before all the renovations came into place. Um, but yeah, it was those were great. I mean, the house was packed every day. Was fortunate to play in that game three times and come out on the winning side every time too. So those are always good memories.
It must be wild to, have been coached by Glenbrook South coach Jim Philbin. Of course, he's in his 30-something year of coaching that varsity team. And now, you're a head coach that plays against him in the same league. So that's pretty interesting. I do want to talk about the SHL Showcase a little bit. Last year
Mm,
was the first edition. It was a great success. We had the 8 SHL teams that made the playoffs the previous year. And then we had 8 teams from out of state come in. I believe everyone played 4 games at Mount Prospect Ice Arena. And it was a lot of fun to see all the, different schools from all over the country and see how the SHL matched up against them. And the SHL did pretty well last year. I know that
yep.
that's coming back again this year on the weekend of the November 22nd through the 24th. So any big plans in store or any changes from last year's setup?
Changes to the setup, yes. So we have more teams this year. So this year we have 19 teams, and you're probably thinking, well, that's an odd number, which it is. So we included anybody who wanted to participate from the SHL. So regardless of playoff status last year, just because it was a great opportunity to showcase the league. Why not showcase us from top to bottom? Fenwick and Ignatius are the only teams not participating, predominantly due to game count being in 2 leagues. Um,
Sure.
but we've also added, obviously, more teams on, we'll call it the other side, the non SHL side. And we have an odd number because we have 2 teams from Michigan, and the Michigan teams are only allowed to play. There's some odd rule, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I don't think they can play 3 games in 2 days or something like that. So they're each playing 2 games apiece, kind of filling in for one slot in the tournament. So yeah, 19 teams is an upgrade from the 16 teams last year, but more or less it's going to be similar format: games all day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All 3 sheets will be utilized at Mount Prospect. We hope to have even more exposure from a scouting perspective. We had guys from NCAA D3 last year, NA, NA3, USPHL, pretty much from all over the place. And, reception was great. So we plan to build on that. And the main thing there is getting exposure for our league and for the players in it. We had a couple guys who got placed post high school because of this showcase last year. So I would consider it a great success, and to top it, I think we had 4 teams that participated in this showcase, obviously New Trier, but represented at USA Hockey Nationals come the end of the year. So truly one of the better high school hockey events in the country, no doubt.
Yeah, I remember that Norwich Free team from Connecticut, New Trier actually ended up playing in the national tournament. So I think it was their second meeting of the year because they played
Yep,
in the SHL showcase. So yeah, that's
correct.
interesting. So
Absolutely.
9 teams from the SHL and 10 from out of state, and then those 2 Michigan teams you mentioned, obviously.
Correct. Yeah. So they essentially count as one for game count purposes.
Cool. Well, I know last year, we run a lot of the social media stuff and YouTube. I feel like it definitely snuck up on us a little bit last year, but we're gonna really try and push this narrative and get everyone hyped about the SHL showcase this time around because it really was a fun event last year.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I think, we could have easily put 25, 30 teams into it. It was so well received and spoke about not only in the Midwest, but, around the country from the teams that participated. So it was great. Like I said, one of the premier events for high school hockey right now in the country.
All right, that does it for me. I think Luke, you said you have anything else or?
Yeah, all good. Just want to thank you, Coach, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
definitely.
guys.
Yeah, appreciate you hopping on. We will see you on the broadcast on December 7th when you guys play Stevenson. I think that's your first appearance on the SHL network, so we're looking forward to that.
Yep, should be a great one little rivalry series we got, and we
Exactly.
play for the STV Cup every year. So
Yeah,
ready to get
I'll
that
never
started.
forget. I think we talked about it last podcast. I'll never forget being on the call for that 8-7 win a couple seasons back over the Stevenson Patriots. That was a wild game.
Yeah, that gave me a couple gray hairs. I like to be more defensive minded than that. So yeah,
All right, Coach. Thanks so much for doing this again. Appreciate
thanks,
your
guys.
time.
Take care.
Up next, we've got our preview of next week, and we've got an interesting schedule. We've got games every day except for Monday, which is the day we're filming this, and SHL teams have Halloween off too. So if anyone wants to go trick or treating or anything, they don't have to worry about a game on their schedule. So let's start off with Tuesday, October 29th. We've got the Glenbrook South Titans on the road against the Carmel Catholic Corsairs at Glacier Ice Arena. That one is an 8:30 start. We talked about how the Titans have been kind of heating up, but that streak got put to a halt last night when they played the St. Ignatius Wolfpack. Carmel, we just talked about how they've been a team that stayed somewhat close in games, just haven't gotten over the finish line too much. They did have the one win already in their record so far. So, what do you make of this matchup, Luke?
I think it could be tighter than people imagine. I mean, obviously the Titans handled the season series well last year, but Carmel, we're talking about how they took GBN to overtime last week, how they only lost to Lake Forest by one. Lake Forest gave the Titans a fight. You just never know when you come into these weekday games. It's just a lot of unexpected always, and it's the beginning of a tough week for the Corsairs. So if they want to start off on the right foot, it starts on Tuesday at Glacier Ice Arena.
Yeah, you're not kidding about a tough week for the Corsairs. That is, Luke, their first of what will be four contests this week. And the next one will be the very next day, a little earlier start, 2 hours earlier. It'll be at 6:30 over at Glacier Ice Arena as they welcome in the Loyola Ramblers, Loyola Gold, of course, into town in Vernon Hills. And Loyola, we talked about how hot they are, still have yet to lose in regulation, but they are 6-3, all three of those losses being overtime losses. So Carmel will, get a good taste of playing GBS the night before. How do you think they carry any possible momentum, whether it be on the scoreboard or not, into a back-to-back against Loyola?
I think it is primarily how you play the day before. I mean, if you get the floor wiped by Glenbrook South and you come into this game, you're not coming in with as much confidence. And when you're playing a good team that hasn't been beaten in regulation, you have to be confident, or else you're practically shameful in the fact that you are going to lose this game. That's just not the mentality you can have if you're Carmel. Obviously, you haven't started your season off on the right foot, but this is another one of those statement games. I tell you what, it doesn't matter if it's the Titans or the Ramblers. If they take one of these games, it could be huge for their stock.
All right, up next on Wednesday night, we've got another one for you. It will be Glenbrook North taking on Fenwick for the second time this season. The first meeting went the way of the Spartans by a 4-1 score. Fenwick, we talked about how they had a nice little start to the season. They were 2-1, then they were 3-3, but unfortunately for the Friars, they have lost four straight, some of them by pretty decisive margins. But within that four-game losing streak, they did only lose 3-2 on the road to Loyola. So this is again another one of those teams where you can't count them out. They keep it close in these tight games, and in the SHL, anything can happen. So we'll see if GBN can get the season series win or if Fenwick will tie it up on that one.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Glenbrook North already playing Fenwick once. They won that one 4-1. And for Fenwick, you've already felt out Glenbrook North once. You got to adjust their strengths and weaknesses and try to attack their weaknesses. This is an offense that's struggling right now, Dylan. Only 1.7 goals per game on average. The Friars can really try to stop the downslope with a game against GBN, a team they've already played. It's going to come down to the film study and execution on this one.
And of course, you go all the way back to last season. That was a big win for Fenwick over GBN in December. It was the Friars' first win of the season. So they played them close a lot last year too. So the 4-1 this season is one thing, but Fenwick is another one of those teams where they seem to have something on GBN. So we'll see what they do there. Then of course Thursday is Halloween. No teams are in action. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we've got a pair of games on each day. So let's go through them. Friday, November 1st, it is St. Viator going on the road to take on the Glenbrook North Spartans. So the Spartans will be coming off that home game against Fenwick. They'll be home again over that hot St. Viator team. And this should be a matchup that I'm certainly going to have my popcorn for. We've got the 4-1-1 Lions against the 5-1 pending the result of the Fenwick game for GBN. Early, deep playoff matchup perhaps, or a
Oh
preview,
yeah, and you
I'd
know
say.
what? Unfortunately, I'm not going to be in town for this weekend. I'm actually one of the things I'm doing is I'm catching a University of Illinois club hockey game, so that'll be fun to see because I think there
All
are
right.
some former SHL guys, if not just them. I know I have some buddies who play on the Illinois team. A lot of people from this kind of northern Illinois hockey region tend to go play ACHA, and it'll be fun to see some of them and their advancements. But I will say I do steal a couple live barn accounts of my friends, and that is one I will probably be looking back on. Or I believe GBN does some of their games on YouTube as well. So
Yes.
I'm
There you
going
go.
to try to catch it either way, or because this is probably, just looking down the slate, I gotta say this is my favorite matchup of the week, Dylan.
Yeah, yeah. We have our matchup of the week, personal matchup of the week, and yeah, I think that that's a solid candidate. Up next, also on Friday, November 1st, we've got the Carmel Catholic Corsairs continuing their busy week as they go on the road to take on the Fenwick Friars in what will be game of the week broadcast number 2 of the season. So the crew will be out there in Oak Park at the Paul Hruby Ice Arena to witness that one. And when we had Giovanni Senna on the podcast earlier a few weeks back, he told us how he prefers playing at Paul Hruby as opposed to the Edge because of the more intimate setting and fan turnout. So SHL game of the week, this should be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Two teams that have not played each other yet, and two teams as of recent who are looking very similar. So, Friday going into what many call Hollow Weekend, it should be a very fun one, a rowdy one, and Fenwick trying to get out of that losing streak, as we mentioned, as well as Carmel, who's hung tight. So it's going to be unpredictable, but all we could tell you is it's going to be a good game live on YouTube. So make sure to listen to, I know Chris Dubiel's doing that game and a couple of others as well. So make sure to tune into the crew because it should be a fun one on tap.
Yeah, especially at that barn, it's always fun. We have the broadcast booth up there. Good stuff. All right, moving along to Saturday, November 2nd. We've got the Fenwick Friars in action again. We'll be playing on that back-to-back as they travel to Alumni Memorial Fieldhouse against the Lake Forest Scouts. That one's at 5:15. And Luke, would you believe it? This is the conclusion of the season series between the Fenwick Friars and Lake Forest Scouts already with 2 games in the SHL under their belt. Fenwick with the 2-1 overtime win the first time these two teams locked horns, and the second time around, Lake Forest comes away with a 4-1 victory. So we'll see. We'll see who claims the season series with this one.
Yeah, absolute grudge match, Dylan. Always defensive when these two teams played. Like you said, the losing team on each side has only scored 1 goal. The most goals we've seen in a matchup so far between these two is 5. So it should be another defensive battle again. But I mean, another one of those battles, Fenwick having a back-to-back. We'll see how that affects them. But it should still be a very fun one at Alumni Memorial.
All right, up next, we've got the Glenbrook North Spartans at home once again as they welcome in the St. Ignatius Wolfpack. That one's at 7:10 p.m. And this is going to be another good game between two teams that are hot. And again, this is a rematch of both of these teams' first game of the season where, St. Ignatius won 1-0 with the only goal coming in the second period. We talked about it earlier on the podcast. Since that game, GBN has won all 5 of their games on the schedule to this point. So these are two teams that are hot, and we will see what happens. And I'm going to go ahead and say that this one is my personal matchup of the week so far in this early season.
So many great matchups this weekend, whether
Yeah.
it's a top team versus a top team or a bottom team versus a bottom team. It is going to be good hockey all around this weekend. And this is one of those top versus top examples where you got GBN, who's only lost 1 game on the year. And then St. Ignatius, don't be fooled by their record. They are such an incredible team, fun team to watch, as we mentioned earlier in this episode. Two, two huge, I mean, this is a huge game in the SHL standings as well. GBN, of course, playing lesser games, but they're catching right up to the Wolfpack. So we'll see if they can get a boost off of beating them here.
And of course, it's being the second game, it's our second meeting of the season. You talk about how crucial this is for standings. St. Ignatius with 2 wins over GBN, who's proving to be, one of these teams that's going to finish in the top of the league, at least on pace to. If they could get, 2 wins over them, maybe even both in regulation, that would be huge. So moving along, we've got our last day of the week, of course, Sunday, November 3rd, another set of 2 games. First one's at 5:30 p.m. at North Shore Ice Arena. New Trier hosting the St. Viator Lions. So, I mean, the great matchups just keep on continuing here as we've got 2 teams who combined only have 2 regulation losses on the season so far.
Yeah, and this is another one of the first matchups of the season between these two teams out at North Shore Ice Arena. New Trier not knowing what to expect with the St. Viator team that looks like one of the best teams in the state in a couple of their games. It is going to be an offensive showdown. Both teams with incredible power plays. I mean, this is if you like offense, you better make sure you're at North Shore on a Sunday night.
And if you want to maybe watch 2 SHL games on Sunday night in person, you can because that one's at 5:30, but the next one after that is not until 8:10 p.m. down in Chicago at Fifth Third Arena. We've got the St. Ignatius Wolfpack taking on the Carmel Catholic Corsairs. So there's another back-to-back for St. Ignatius. And you're going to see 2 tired teams in this one. As we said, Carmel, this will be their 4th game of the week.
Yeah, as my coach always likes to say, it's not what's in your legs, it's what's in your mind. Coming into this game, you just got to be mentally strong, empty the tank, and eventually get some rest because this is a much needed game for both sides. So we'll see what happens. Also, not only that, both teams, St. Ignatius coming off the back-to-back, Carmel playing their 4th game, an 8-10 on a Sunday, just from personal experience, playing those late Sunday night games, it is a lot, just mentally and physically. You're pretty tired typically, start of the second period, and you're just using all adrenaline to get you through the rest of the game. So, I mean, good luck to both teams playing that Sunday late night slot, but it's not putting either team at a disadvantage, that's for sure. It's still going to be what we hope is even hockey. So,
Yeah, and for Carmel, that 8:10 gets a little bit rougher when you think about, the travel that they're going to have to do down to the city is, it won't be easy, but that is your preview of week number 7 in the SHL, and it's a lot of fun. We're really starting to see the standings kind of take shape and figure out, which teams are, setting themselves up to be in the top, which teams are kind of falling behind. And that's something that we haven't had a very clear picture of so far on the season just because of the disparity in games played. But the SHL is starting to take form. Lots of teams already with 10 games played. So we will see what happens as we continue along into November. We've got 2 more things for you here on this episode of the podcast. We always end with our question of the week and our trivia question. So your question of the week this week is, what is your pregame meal before you play a game? And I'm gonna alter this question just a little bit. I'm gonna say meal or routine because maybe somebody maybe there's just a more interesting answer there. So that is my question. And Luke, do you have an answer to that question?
well, Dylan, I mean, I feel like it's going to be the same from a lot of these guys just because, on paper, it is the one of the best things to have, and that is any sort of pasta. I always loved, you know, my parents making me some pasta before a game. I still don't know how to make pasta. Don't tell anybody that. But I was able to get my mom to make me some meals before games, and always carb loaded meals were when I feel I performed best. So if any SHL players that are listening do not know that, now you do. So definitely start making sure you watch what you eat, not only the last meal, but all day. I mean, if you're eating healthy foods all day, you're going to see a difference in your performance. And I'm sure with the talent of these guys, they already know that, but maybe there's some who don't. But yeah, absolutely resort to pasta a couple times. It not only tastes good, but it's good for your performance. So, Dylan, how about you?
Well, the reason I changed the question a little bit is because I know not everybody that listens to the podcast is or was a player. And also, half of the people who run the podcast never played hockey. So, my pregame routine, since I never played as a broadcaster, well, for the first thing, I don't really have a go-to meal, just something that's not going to make me burp, I guess, a lot on air. But Luke, you turned me on to this medicine ball tea from Starbucks.
Got one this morning.
I'm hooked, man. I'm hooked. We did Luke and I worked together for a tournament over the summer, and we were doing games on games on games, maybe 5 to 6 per day, and our voices were shot. And Luke gave me this recommendation, and I ended up having one. And dude, I have one before every single broadcast now. It's almost like I need it or I feel like something's missing. So that's gonna be my pregame meal, but. I also just thought I'd share this. I've had this routine for about 3 years now, and it doesn't matter what time of day it is or how recently I brush my teeth. The last thing I do before I leave for a broadcast is brush my teeth. And I don't know why it's I feel like it doesn't do much for me. I guess it just makes like my mouth and vocal cords feel cleaner, but it's just something I've been doing for a few years now, and at this point it's like it's again, if I don't do it, I feel like something's kind of off and I don't know, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel prepared and ready to talk for a couple of hours.
I
So
mean,
especially when I have a solo broadcast.
yeah, I mean, every great broadcaster has their own little superstition. I guess that's one that you're now kind of revealing. But yeah, no, that as you're saying prior, the medicine ball tea is incredible. I had it this morning at my on my campus because I was in the University of Iowa all weekend. I was tired, pretty run down, and I had one of those, and I'm not gonna say it fixed me for the rest of the day, but it definitely gave me a boost, and it has a little bit of caffeine in there, but not enough to dry out your voice. So
Right.
yeah, no, broadcasters definitely look into that because it really soothes your throat. And players, if you're sick, it also helps when you're sick as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
anybody in general, seriously, give it a shot. It's got like honey, lemon, and citrus. And as much as I think Starbucks rips me off sometimes, I think this drink is absolutely worth the price. So
Yeah, and a lot of people just don't like tea because they don't like the bitter taste of it. This is like not really tea. I mean, it is, but it tastes sweet. It tastes like something that's not like leaves and water. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
whoever thought we'd be talking about a type of tea on a high school hockey
Yeah.
podcast, but here we are,
Yeah.
episode 6, baby.
Question of the week. That's great. The question of the week is always versatile. And speaking of that, be sure to comment your question of the week answer in the comments. What is your favorite pregame meal slash routine or any, however you want to interpret that? We just want to hear your response. So please make sure that you hit us down below in the comments section. And then we're going to wrap up with our weekly trivia question. Of course, as we mentioned earlier in this episode, now would normally be the time that we reveal the winner of last week's, but the winner was Tim Benz, who was our podcast guest, coming in with the answer there. The question was, Luke, you want to repeat that one?
The state champion of the Red Varsity Division in 2003. Tim nailed it, even got the runner up. It was Fenwick beating Loyola Gold. And you know why? Because Benz actually played for Glenbrook South during that time. So he knew it like the back of his head.
Hmm. All right. Well, this week we've got another one for you, and you can. Last week, Luke, you said try not to use Google. I'm gonna go ahead and give full permission to use any online source you have, because even with knowledge of the SHL website and how to, look at the stats, this is not an easy one to find. It's if you're gonna use the internet to find it, it will take you some time. So here's the question. What was the final score of the highest scoring SHL varsity game last season? And I will give you a hint. There were two that were tied. So all I need from you in the comment section below is one of those two that was the highest scoring game. And I'm not going to say how many goals it had. I'm not going to say anything about it, which teams or anything. But there are two correct answers. And if you get both, then you get bonus points. And those bonus points are probably not good for much, but you can go around telling people that you have them. So, what was the highest scoring game in the SHL last season? That is your trivia question. And that's going to bring us to an end here on episode number 6 of the Scholastic Sit Down. Luke, do you have anything you want to get off your chest here before we end?
Well, I tell you what, if you guys aren't doing anything, get out and watch some great games this week. It's always on the SHL website. And also, we talked about it here. We gave you the times, we gave you the locations. Be there because it is going to be a big week of SHL hockey, and I can't wait to talk about it next week and recap it all. So,
Yeah, especially Friday night. It would be great to have a big crowd on hand for the game of the week, of course, Carmel and Fenwick over there at Paul Hruby Ice Arena. So, yeah, get out, watch some hockey. The hockey is great. It doesn't feel like it's just like, high school hockey. It feels like it's some kind of, junior level. I mean, these are some really skilled athletes and some great teams, and you definitely want to get out and see it, as Luke said. So that's going to finish up episode number 6. We will see you next Tuesday for episode number 7. And of course, this goes without saying, but we are back on our weekly episode every Tuesday now that the kickoff show has taken place. So we will see you next Tuesday and the one after that and all the way till the end of the season. So, all right, have a great week, everyone.